Hi everyone, Tim Krager here. Welcome to the online mini course for crushing anxiety and depression. I'm so glad you clicked that let's jump in button so that we could get going together today. Let's take a look at this. If you're ready to jump right in to start your 30-day roadmap to enjoying a life of greater happiness, peace, and rest, then just click the button that says let's get started. Otherwise, stick with me, and I can't wait to show you where anxiety and depression actually come from. Before we jump in though, I want to ask you a couple questions. If you could get tools that would help you to crush your anxiety and depression, would you want them? I'm hunching, as you sit there in your living room or if you're listening in your car, that your answer to that is yes. I have another question for you. If you could also get tools that would help you to enjoy greater happiness, peace, and rest, would you want those tools? And if your answer to that is yes as well, I can't wait for you to see my full online course. So I want to do an exercise before we go any further. Find a comfortable position. Of course, if you're driving, pull over for this, or you'll have to do it later, or do your best, but make sure you keep your eyes on the road and that you're staying safe. So here's the exercise. Get into a comfortable position and take 3 nice deep breaths in, where you fill your lungs up to the count of 3 and exhale to the count of 6. Are you ready for this? Okay, fill your lungs up to the count of 3 from the bottom to the top. So that means your diaphragm's actually going to extend a little bit as you take that air in. And then you're going to exhale to the count of 6. So if you haven't already started, inhale, 1, 2, 3. Exhale to the count of 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, inhale to the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and exhale to the count of 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last time, inhale to the count of 3, filling your lungs up from the bottom to the top, and now exhale to the count of 6. That's great. Good job. So now what I'd like you to do in this more relaxed state is I invite you to see yourself 5 years from now. Also see yourself 10 years from now, maybe 15 years from now. See yourself as an older person. And for a minute, I want you to imagine if you were still depressed or if you were still anxious 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. What would your life be like? Is that what you want for yourself? Or would you like to be free from anxiety and depression and enjoying greater happiness, peace, and rest? I'll tell you it's possible because the things that I'm going to share in this mini course today, as well as things that I'm going to share in the full extended online course, your 30-day roadmap to greater happiness, peace, and rest, those have all the tools that I've used with myself as well as hundreds of clients to help them to reduce and crush their symptoms of anxiety and depression and to enjoy a life of greater happiness, peace, and rest. So now, see yourself as that older person, 15 years older from now. How do you want to invest in your older self? What kind of things would you do for yourself today that would help that older person be a better person in the future? Perhaps this course is one of them. I really invite you to consider that and how you would invest in yourself. It's just like putting a little bit of money into a bank account today. Maybe the interest on a couple bucks isn't that much, but as you keep investing in yourself day after day, that compound interest turns into something great within 15 years. And now you feel wealthy. The same thing happens with our psychological and emotional well-being. That if you'll go for it and invest in yourself just like you are right now by taking this free online mini course, as you do that, that's where you'll start to find that today maybe it doesn't make a huge difference, but each and every day that you keep investing in yourself, that interest will compound over time and you'll start getting results that you can't imagine. So if you want to skip this mini course and jump right into your 30-day course on crushing anxiety and depression and promoting a life of greater happiness, peace, and rest, by all means, just click the Let's Get Started button. Otherwise, I want to walk you through exactly what triggers anxiety and depression inside of people. Question for you, and just come up with your best answers on this. They don't have to be a perfect answer. The first question is, how many miles do you think you've traveled over the course of your lifetime? By land, sea, or air? How many miles do you think you've traveled by land, sea, or air? Again, just go with a quick gut response. Your next question is, how fast do you think you've traveled by land, sea, or air? What's the fastest you've ever traveled in your life? Now, I spoke to a group of first responders one day. I was doing a live presentation similar to what I'm doing now. And someone in the room raised their hand. It was actually a police officer. And I said, who in the room has gone the fastest by land, sea, or air? He raised his hand and said he's gone 170 miles per hour on a motorcycle. So, think about your answers. And now I want to share something with you. Whatever those answers are, I actually know how fast you've traveled in your lifetime. And I know how many miles that you've traveled. The fastest that you've traveled. What's interesting is that the Earth spins on its axis at about 1,060 miles per hour. The Earth also spins around the Sun at approximately 66,000 miles per hour. And the mileage that we travel per day as we travel around the Sun is about 1.62 million miles per day. So if you took your age and multiplied it by 1.62 million miles, you'll see how far you've traveled in your lifetime. Plus you can add whatever you've done here on the Earth. Why do I bring this up? The reason I bring it up is because why don't you recognize that you're traveling that fast or that you're traveling that many miles per hour? One of the reasons is because we've habituated to that type of speed and that type of mileage, as well as relativity, because we're so far from the Sun that it's hard for us to see that we're moving that fast or that we've traveled that many miles. But the reality is you've habituated to that fact. Since you were conceived in the womb, you've always been traveling that fast and that many miles per day. There's something else that you've been doing since you were in the womb as well. Something that you've habituated to. And that is that every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, you're creating your life. That's right, since you were conceived in the womb, you've been creating. Think about it. You started off as an egg cell and a sperm cell that came together, and then that multiplied from one cell into 2, into 4, into 8, 16, 32, and so on. We've been creating all the time. That's all we do is create. And so I want to show you something that I call the creation arc. And you'll see as we progress here how it ties in to anxiety and depression. So let's get started. And I'm going to draw here on the board my little mountain. And this again is what I call the creation arc. And we'll put a couple little plants down here in the corners. So, when we create, what do we always start with? That's right, we start with a vision. So no matter what we create in life, it always starts with a vision. Somebody says, hey, I have an idea. So, these pens that I'm using, it started in somebody's head. Hey, I think we can do these markers. And somebody said maybe we could create a whiteboard that these markers could draw on and you could easily erase them. Somebody said this shirt that I'm wearing, hey, I have an idea. Maybe we could create these blue shirts and these black pants that I'm wearing. Somebody had an idea for that. Now and this is what I call the vision phase of creation. So everything starts with a vision. Now your goal is to ultimately, you want to triumph. So whoever created the shirt that I'm wearing, ultimately they came to a place where they actually created it. And that's what I call the triumph. Now, after you've actually reached a goal, that feels really good. And so when you're done, we all tend to have these mini celebrations. And after we celebrate, Then we go into learning. Try to make this so you can see it, and thankfully my camera person Marilee is going to help you by zooming in on these. So we learn and we refine whatever our process is. So whoever made these markers, for example, I'm guessing that the first time they made it, they learned from what they made and then they tried again. So then we also, along the way, beliefs are created. So we had a vision, we accomplished our goal, we celebrated, we learned and refined, and then beliefs were created on what was possible in the world. Beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about other people, beliefs about a higher power. Now I want to come back to a couple steps in between the vision phase and the triumph phase. When we're at the vision phase, typically we have a lot of optimistic feelings inside, positive feelings that we tend to enjoy. Then we move on to what I call the work phase of creating, or what I call the grind. So, no matter what we create, at some point we just have to go to work. So we get excited about the vision, and then we've got to go to work. So I have students, college students, they told me about how they applied for college and how it was so exciting and they couldn't wait to find out the answer if they were going to get into the college of their choice. And they were super excited here. But then they had to do their application, which the application wasn't that exciting. The idea of going to college was, but the application itself wasn't super fun. It was just work. You had to get the work done so that you could accomplish your goal of being accepted by a college. And so this phase can be fun, but a lot of times you just got to do the grind. You got to work through it to get what you want in life. Now, this next piece is something that is super critical, so tune in here. This is where anxiety and depression get started. And it's something that I call the wall. No matter what we create in life, no matter what, we will always hit a wall. That's something that gets in our way of creating what we want. So think about it. Think about a marathon runner. They hit a wall, right? And so that wall, somewhere around miles 22 to 24, all of a sudden they hit what they call the wall. And the wall is what? Why do they call it the wall? It's because everything in their mind-body system starts to shut down. All of a sudden they start to say, I don't think I can do this. And they're ready to quit at that point. But if they'll keep going, they hit what they call their second wind. So, we're the same way when we're creating. If we'll stick with things, we'll actually get our second wind and be able to finish creating what we want, or triumphing. From the vision we had, working, grinding away, breaking through walls, and then ultimately we triumph. Now there's something that's very interesting about human beings and our nervous system. If you rewind the clock thousands of years, there was a time when we would actually compete with other animals for food and shelter. And in that process, what was wired into our nervous system was this fight or flight system. And this was super helpful to us because it actually keeps us alive. You actually, if you hit a threat, there's something that you can do about it. You can either run for your life or you can fight for your life. Fast forward to our day and age, there are some countries and there are some parts of countries that are unsafe and people are in fight or flight mode throughout the whole day. Most people, though, throughout the world actually live in a somewhat safe environment. And so, with that said, though, our nervous system is still wired with fight or flight responses. Even though we no longer have to compete against other animals, we still have that fight or flight response in us. And so what happens is that it's not just that there is a threat, it's even when we perceive a threat. So what I've noticed is that when people have a vision of what they want to create in their lives, and they work through that and they grind away, they're gonna hit walls. They're gonna hit barriers that keep them from getting what they want. And when we hit these walls, this triggers the fight or flight response. It's this fight or flight response then, this is what triggers anxiety and depression. Again, remember, you either run for your life or you fight for your life. So, I'll give you an example of a time that, as I was working on this online course, for example, I would spend hours in the library, hours researching and studying and thinking about the experiences I had as a therapist. And there were so many times that I would hit a wall and I didn't think it was possible to create the course and deliver it to you today. And so when that would happen, it would trigger my nervous system. And I would start to get feelings like being bummed out or sad. Sometimes I would feel guilt for spending so much time on the course. I would feel shame. Thinking, crud, I just don't have the skills to make it happen. I don't have what it takes. I'm not acceptable. Guess what these are symptoms of? These are symptoms of depression. Now, because I would not quit and I kept pushing through, I would get my second wind and would continue on with the course, and then all of a sudden I would find answers. And that's when I would start to get excited. Oh my gosh, it's possible. The finish line is almost here. So the other response, so this is a fleeing response. When we get depressed, think about it. People want to isolate, they want to be by themselves. That's running from the challenge that's before you. Or running from completing the vision that you once had and triumphing. The other thing that I noticed would happen is that I would start to wonder something. And I'm going to give this as an example. Most countries have traffic lights. And in America, the traffic lights look like this. And when you come to a red light, what do? Well, you stop. When you come to a green light, what do? You go. And there's something that happens that from the time the light is red, before it turns green, it goes to yellow. And the question becomes, what do you do when you hit a yellow light? And the answer always is, well, it depends. It depends on if there's other cars in the intersection. It depends on how close you are to the intersection. It depends on if you have somebody who's dying in the backseat of your car. It depends on if there's a police officer that's waiting in the intersection, watching people go through the intersection. And in life, when things start to depend and there are variables, this creates anxiety for humans. So notice a time you've come to a yellow light. If you were far away, you didn't have a lot of anxiety. Or if you were really close when the light turned yellow, you didn't have a lot of anxiety. You knew what to do. But when you were in that spot where you were just far enough away and not close enough that you had to guess whether you should stay or go, stop or go, it creates a lot of anxiety until you make a decision. And so what I noticed, the same thing when I was working on the online course, is I couldn't tell, should I stop doing it or should I go? What this is here represents a transition. Transitions tend to create anxiety in people's lives. And so once again, we have a vision, we start working toward it, and we'll hit a wall. It will either cause us to run for our lives into sadness, guilt, shame, being bummed out, and it also creates a transition that causes you to have to decide if you should keep going or not. So An example that I have seen in my personal life was my daughter, for example. She went to tie her friends were all at the house, and then they all ran outside and said, hey, let's go to the park together. When they all left the house, she realized she didn't have her shoes on. And she started finding her shoes, and then she was at an age where she was just learning to tie her shoes. Now, it was just her in the room and me in the room. And as she started to tie her shoes, or to put them on, she recognized she didn't remember how to tie them. And so guess what she started to do? She started to get sad and to cry. Remember, symptoms of depression. And then she had to figure out how to solve her problem. And so she worked through by getting help from her dad, and eventually she was able to break through the wall and get the triumph that she wanted, which was to go play with her friends at the park. Now, there's something interesting. And what's interesting is that, and that creates confusion for us, is that we are creating our lives mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and physically. And we're doing this simultaneously. So there's lanes of creation going on. You don't just say, oh, I'm working on my social life. Oh, I want to find a new friend, or I want to start dating somebody. You're also simultaneously creating your life physically. You're simultaneously creating your life spiritually. Oh my gosh, I want to start meditating more. I want to serve other people. And so we have visions for all of these different aspects of our lives. The challenge that happens is you may be doing great in your physical life, you may be doing great socially, but maybe you hit a wall spiritually. And when you hit the wall spiritually, it triggers the fight or flight response, which then starts to put you into either a state of depression or to a state of anxiety. Now, if you stay there, it can turn into a clinical case of anxiety or depression. If, like my daughter learning to tie her shoes, if you stick with it and you break through the wall, those symptoms tend to go away quickly because you feel successful and you celebrate the success you just had. So, as we're creating in these different areas of our lives, it would be nice if we only spiritually felt depressed or anxious. The reality, though, is that it leaks over into every ounce of who we think we are. That's why it becomes challenging, because sometimes people don't realize what part of their life they're struggling with. They don't realize where they hit the wall. And that's part of my online course that you're welcome to move toward. If you're ready to move toward it now and you want to get started, just hit the Let's Get Started button now. And this is where I will unfold to you not only what is happening when you get anxious and depressed, but also how to deal with it and the steps that you can take to actually break through the wall. So here's the good news. Yes, I agree that sometimes there are medical conditions that lead to somebody's anxiety and depression. But research is showing more and more that environmental factors actually influence our state of depression or anxiety. So now what I've discovered is that when I get depressed or anxious, I don't look at it as a sickness. I now look at it as a road sign that I've hit a wall in creating the life that I want. I'm going to say that again. Now when I get depressed or anxious, I don't look at it as a sickness that I have that I'll have to deal with forever. I look at it as a road sign telling me that I've hit a wall in creating the life that I want. It's triggered my fight or flight response. And then if I don't break through the wall, it can contribute to ongoing and deepening feelings of anxiety or depression. So we've got to be able to break through the wall. The wall is simply a problem. That's all the wall is. It's a problem we haven't discovered how to solve yet. And in my extended online course, this 30-day roadmap to creating a life of greater happiness, peace, and rest, I'm going to spell out and show you the 4 easy steps of what your brain does with or without you knowing on how to solve a problem. And when you learn these 4 easy things that the brain's already doing, you actually do it in your life. You're just not aware that you're doing it. And that's why I can't wait to share this 30-day course with you that'll spell out exactly what the brain does. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then you'll be able to solve problems on your own time and time again. What's fascinating then is how long are we willing to stick with it? Have you ever heard of the Dyson vacuum cleaner? It's one of the first bagless vacuum cleaners. And it's created by Sir James Dyson of Great Britain. And he, as a creator, there's something what we call iterations. And iterations are just, okay, how many times did it take you to get from your vision state to your triumph state, or where you completed your goal? And when Mr. Dyson created the Dyson vacuum cleaner, it took him 5 iterations before he figured out how to develop the vacuum cleaner. Can you do something 5 times in your life? Can you hit the wall 5 times and keep going? He did. If you can do it 5 times, that's awesome, because you know how many times he actually did it? It was actually 51 iterations that it took him to create his vacuum cleaner. Is there some part of your life that you're working to create mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, physically, that you're willing to do it 51 times until you figure it out? If you're willing to do that, that's awesome, because James Dyson actually did 512 iterations. 512. That's a lot of iterations. Could you hit the wall 512 times and keep going? And this is the last time I'll do this, but if you can, that's awesome, because what it actually took him was 5,126 iterations over a 10-year period before he figured out the solution to creating a bagless vacuum cleaner. 5,126 times that he hit the wall and kept going. And now, if money was important to you, he's the wealthiest man in Great Britain as a result of sticking with it. I have a brother-in-law who is a mechanical engineer. And one of the things that we talked about together one day is that he said in his schooling, they tell them that you'll never get it right the first time, that you need to expect that it's gonna take thousands of iterations before you actually get something to work the way you want it to. He said, so Tim, every time I go to create something, I'm already assuming that it's going to take multiple iterations. Unfortunately, I can't stand when something comes easy to them in life. And the reason I don't like when something comes easy is because people start to assume that's supposed to be the normal. Oh, I'm supposed to have a 5-minute phone call with customer service. Oh, I'm supposed to take my car or my motorcycle or my bicycle into a mechanic and they fix it in 2 minutes for $1. That's how life's supposed to be. And the reality is, that's the exception more than the rule. The rule is that we're gonna hit the wall. And just like my brother-in-law was taught in his mechanical engineering program, you're gonna spend thousands of times trying to figure something out. And so I hope as we recognize, oh wait, life takes time to learn new skills to break through the wall. And as we stick with it, that's when we'll have breakthroughs. And when we have breakthroughs, guess what it'll do? It'll change our beliefs as to what's possible in life. It'll change our beliefs that we actually can work through the wall. And so here is the new paradigm for anxiety and depression. That anxiety and depression are a road sign telling you that you've hit a wall in creating the life that you want. And the wall is merely a problem. And I can't wait to show you in more details how to solve those problems. And I do it in two ways, my 4-part formula and also something that I call the creation code. And I will take you through this 8-code creation model that will help you see step by step what you need to do to create the life that you want. And as you create and you break through these walls, you'll watch your symptoms not only decline or reduce, but what is most exciting to me is that you start to enjoy greater happiness, peace, and rest in your life. So I am super excited that you got to see this new paradigm for anxiety and depression. Frankly, in all my research and studies over the last 20 or more years on anxiety and depression, I've never seen this paradigm. And so it's a new model, and if you have seen it, send me some links about it. I'd love to learn more, but otherwise, I hope you can see now that you're not stuck. You've just hit a wall in your life. That's it. So, great work. You've just taken your first step in crushing anxiety and depression, and your first step toward promoting a life of greater happiness, peace, and rest. I hope you'll join me. If you're ready to go right now, just hit the Let's Get Started button and order your course today. What's fascinating is that my clients, the same information you're going to get in this course, my clients will spend over $1,600, $1,600 to get the same information that I'm going to share with you in the comfort of your own home for just $299. That's it. Now remember, let's go back to the beginning when we thought about yourself as 15 years older. Just investing $299 today so that you can be a happier person 15 years from now, 5 years from now. How about tomorrow you start being happier? You start having more peace and more rest. This is such a great opportunity. And if $299 is too much, I've broken it down into 2 simple payments of $175 a month. So you can break this up and make it easy for yourself. Now, of course, if you do it today, you get a better deal. You save quite a few bucks, right? If you log in today. So the other thing, I'm looking for 2 qualities in people who want to do this course. People who are ready to crush anxiety and depression today. Like they're ready to decide today. Are you one of those people that's ready to decide today? If you are, hit the Let's Get Started button right now. The other person that I'm looking for, the type of person, is people who are willing to put in whatever effort it takes to get the job done. Whatever effort. Are you willing to put in whatever effort it takes? I promise you, that sounds big and hard. Really what I want you to know, I've broken this course down into 30 easy days where you just, if you'll show up one day at a time, that's all it will take. Each day you show up, you go through the coursework, do the worksheets, and as you do it, you're going to start to notice your symptoms reducing. And you're going to start to notice, wow, I'm actually getting the experiences I want in life. And that will lead to greater happiness, peace, and rest. So, invest in that 15-year-old version of yourself. Invest in that 10-year-old version of yourself, or that 5-year-old version. Invest in yourself today. So if you're still here with me, why are you still here? Click that button that says Let's Get Started right now. You can do this. It's just $299 for you to invest in yourself. And I promise you, as much money as we spend on going out to eat or on toys that break a day later that don't make us any happier, this is something that I'm convinced, because of the impact it's had on my clients, will help you to be happier. And I've noticed with my clients, again, I use inventories where they'll go and they'll write out how they're feeling, and we grade it on scales from 0 to 5. And then we track the results over time. And I found that on average, my clients find a reduction in their symptoms of 50% and an increase of 45% in their day-to-day activities and wellness. Isn't that amazing? What if you could get that kind of results? Is that something you would be interested in? All you have to do is sign up today. And as you do that, we're just going to take a step-by-step journey. And every day you're going to log in how you're feeling. And over time, I can't predict the future for you, but I hunch if you're like some of my clients, which I think you are, just average people wanting to live an enjoyable life. If you're just like them, I think what you'll start to see is that you'll enjoy life of greater happiness, peace, and rest. So again, if you're still here, why? Go ahead, click that button. Let's get started today. I'm so excited to work with you, and I can't wait to see you on day 1 of crushing anxiety and depression. And until then, look for reasons to smile in your life. Try to figure out what walls you've hit and realize, wait, if I stick with this, I actually can break through the wall. Okay, until then, keep smiling. See you soon.